Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, Bethany Brings Books. I am excited to be talking about my July TBR today. Thank y'all for watching my videos. I have hit 100 subscribers, which is so exciting. I know that probably sounds like nothing compared to most channels, but it's exciting for me. I'm having fun doing this, and it's actually helping me meet some of my book goals. Thank y'all for subscribing and commenting and watching my videos. I am having a lot of fun getting to know all of y'all and interacting with you and just talking about some of our favorite things, books. So like I said earlier, this video is going to be my July TBR. I'm going into this with the idea of creating a TBR kind of just as a guide for things that I would like to read this month. Not necessarily something that I may entirely stick with, just because I am a huge mood reader. On a TBR kind of does help me have a little bit more focus on my reading and be more intentional about some of the things that I'm reading. So just keep that in mind as we go into this, that this doesn't necessarily mean that I'm for sure going to read all these books this month, but it's a general guide for me to kind of have available on hand. So these are the books that I have chosen that I would like to read during this month. This stack. The first book that I have on here is called Fear Gone Wild by Kayla Stoecklein. This book I found at Ollie's, and I picked it up because I saw that the foreword was by Lisa Turkhurst, and I actually thought at first that it was written by her, but it's not. But this is a story of mental illness, suicide, and hope through loss. And when I saw this on the front, it really caught my eye because I've talked about on here before that my husband actually passed away as a result of suicide. He struggled with depression and bad choices that he made toward the end of his life, and it really caused his depression to worsen, and he was struggling, and he was a police officer, so it was really hard for him to seek help. He thought that it would interfere with his job, and so the lady that wrote this book, her husband passed away as a result of suicide, and he was actually a pastor. Andrew Stoecklein, he died by suicide at the age of 30. In the wake of the tragedy, his widow Kayla embarked on a journey to better understand Andrew's battle, come alongside those with similar struggles, and help the church overcome the stigma of suicide. And so that really interests me because it's part of what I've tried to do since my husband passed away, is just bring awareness to depression, mental illness, just the stigma that there is in it, not only in law enforcement and first responders, but even in the church world. There is a really big stigma and a lot of misinformation about mental illness, and so I'm really interested in reading this one. Then next, I want to read Suffering Is Never for Nothing by Elizabeth Elliot. I talked about this on my video that I did, books that I want to read before the end of 2022. This was one of the books that I mentioned, and so I'm trying to kind of look back and read some of those books, and be intentional about choosing some of those books and reading them. And this was one of them that I mentioned. I have quite a few Elizabeth Elliot books. I have enjoyed reading about her life for years now, and especially since my husband passed away, I've just connected with so many things in her story, because she lost two spouses. And her first husband, Jim Elliot, was a missionary who passed away. Him and several other men were killed in the 1950s in Ecuador doing mission work, and she was also a missionary as well. And so I love her writing. She is one of my favorite Christian nonfiction authors. I really love her writing, and it's really been an encouragement to me, and just listening to her teaching and her speaking. She has now passed away, but reading her books really encouraged me, and so I'm looking forward to reading this one. I think this is one of the last books that she wrote, if I'm not mistaken. and it is just kind of talking about how that we go through suffering and that it's not for nothing. You know, there's reasons behind our suffering and we can grow in our suffering, and so I'm really looking forward to this one. It's not very thick, so I don't think it will be very difficult to read. And another book that I want to read, this one is actually on one of my goals for the year. I had a couple books that I wanted to reread, and this is one of them. This is The Stars for a Light by Lynn and Gilbert Morris. This is a very old Christian fiction book. It was published back in 1994. This series I read growing up and I really enjoyed it. There's like 7 books in it, and it follows a female physician who in this book she's just getting started in like the late 1800s, just after the Civil War, I believe. And so we just kind of follow her journey as a female physician. In this book, she travels on the bride ships, I think is what they were called. Some ships that left New York and went to Washington Territory and took like several hundred women, I think, to be brides. So she gets a job as a physician on this ship, and she hires a nurse, and incidentally the nurse happens to be a man who was a nurse during the Civil War, I think, or he was in the Civil War and he helped take care of wounded. I can't remember, it's been so long. But anyway, she's like shocked when a man applies for her position as a nurse. But he ends up going with her, and he used to be a boxer too, so he's like big and kind of rough. And so they're total opposites, because she is wealthy and from a upper class family, and so they travel together with these ladies on these ships. And I just remember his name is Shiloh, and he was one of my favorite characters growing up of any books that I had ever read, and his character still sticks with me now. And I just really want to reread this series and see if I still like it as much as I did when I was younger. And so next, I hear all of this stuff about Jane Austen July, and I don't even know what it is. I've not done any research. So clue me in the comments. But I thought, you know what? I'm hearing all this about Jane Austen July. I'll give it a go and read a Jane Austen book. And while I'm reading a Jane Austen book, I'm also going to read another author who, in my opinion, is very Jane Austen-esque. Now, I say that saying I've never actually read a Jane Austen book. I have read snippets, but I've never completely. I've read a little bit of Pride and Prejudice. I've read a little bit of Sense and Sensibility, and I may have read some abridged versions when I was younger, but I've never completely read one of her unabridged novels. And it was actually one of my goals for this year, one of the classics that I wanted to read. So while I am accomplishing reading a Jane Austen book in July, I will also be reading one of my classics that I have on my list, so that'll be cool. But anyway, I plan to read this book, DustDarkest Shores by Carolyn Miller. This is from her Regency Wallflower series that she is currently doing. She has 2 published so far. I think it's going to be a trilogy. That's what she typically does. But she is an Australian author that I discovered last year, and her writing is very, from what I've read of Jane Austen, that's what her writing style reminds me of. Very true to the time period. She has a very different writing style than some of the other Regency authors I've read, and I enjoy it because you feel even in the language and the details and her writing, just like the descriptions and everything, you feel very much in that time period. I don't like to read Regency books that have dialogue that sounds like it's from 2022. That irks me. in any period novel. I don't like to read. I like to read like the language and the dialogue. I like it to be true to that period. This book is about a lady named Mary Bloomfield who is, I guess, considered a old maid, wallflower. She's not married. She lives with her father and helps him with his medical practice. So someone comes home from the war struggling with PTSD, a man named Adam Edgerton, and I think she helps him as he's struggling with his depression and PTSD, it sounds like. So anyway, that sounds interesting to me, and this cover is so gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. Then for Jane Austen July, I have this copy of Persuasion from the Paper Mill Press series. It's so pretty, and I am going to attempt to read this. It's one of the smaller Jane Austen books, so I thought if I'm going to start out with one, I should tackle the smaller one first. Isn't that so pretty? I'm really interested to read this. I don't even know what it's about at all. And I would like to read an Agatha Christie this month. I really enjoy reading Agatha Christie. Usually I'll read one and finish it up and I'm like, man, I want to read another one like right now. And then I go a while and don't pick up another one because I'm so busy reading other stuff. But I want to read this one, Five Little Pigs. I know it involves a nursery rhyme. I know Agatha Christie did several books that involve nursery rhymes. And this is a Poirot mystery. I'm looking forward to reading this one. And then I have a lot of poetry, and I just don't typically pick it up to read. And so I really, for a long time now, I've wanted to kind of focus more on reading some poetry. So I want to pick up this. It's the poetry of Elizabeth Barrett Browning and just kind of start working my way through it. I bought this collection at Ollie's, I think, and it's got like several books in it, and each one is a different poetry by a different author. I've read little poetry through the years. When I was younger, poetry was so difficult for me to understand or comprehend, and it still is depending on the style of writing. So I want to take this slowly. I know I won't finish it in July, but I really want to work slowly at it and just slowly read it and savor it and enjoy it and try to understand it. So those are the books that I have picked for my TBR. I do have a few other books that I want to finish in July. One of them is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I am not very far into this. I'm chugging along at it. His writing style is a little bit difficult for me to grasp. It's just some of the language he uses and stuff. And so far, I'm still not even into the first chapter. There's this really long prologue, introduction type thing, and I'm almost to the end of that. And then we get into the first chapter. So I'm really looking forward to getting into this. If I can just get past this first section and get into the first chapter and grasp it, and I'm hoping it'll be a little bit clearer to understand then. And this is one that I'm hoping to finish this month. Also, I have started on this, picked it up and started on it, and it was really interesting. Count the Nights by Stars by Michelle Shockley. I ended up picking up some other books that I read before this. I'm really bad for picking up a book, starting it, and then kind of laying it down and moving on to something else, which I did with this. And it's not because the book is not intriguing, like it immediately intrigued me. And so I'm really hoping that I will finish this month, pick it back up, because it is good. It is a dual timeline. I read Michelle Shockley's previous book, Under the Tulip Tree, which was really good. And so this one looks to be really good as well. It's written in 1961 and 1897 are the two different timelines in Nashville, Tennessee, and it all revolves around this hotel called the Maxwell House Hotel. and the Tennessee Centennial Exposition. And I'm really interested in this one. And that is my TBR for July. I am also hoping to pick up one of my Newbery books. I have some over here on this shelf. I don't think you can see it, but over here on this shelf I have some Newbery honor books and award winners, and so I'm hoping to pick up one of them. I don't know which one I want to pick up yet, but if y'all have read any of the Newbery award books and you have one that you enjoyed and you would recommend, just leave it in the comments. I would love to know some of your recommendations for those. I am trying to work my way through reading those. I did not read a lot of them growing up. I may have read some, but I didn't read a ton. And so I'm really interested in reading some more of those. But anyway, thank y'all for watching. This is my TBR, and I am excited to dive into it in July. Thank y'all for watching. Bye bye.